Welcome to the Capstone Conversation, the East Bay's best podcast. Hosted by Jared Ash, bringing you in-depth conversations with the leaders shaping your community.
Today, we are going to talk about downtown economic development, and we're going to talk about how funding comes from that through the use of special tax districts, whether it's property business improvement districts, from a man who has created more than 100 of those districts. I am joined by Marco Lee Mondry, who is out of San Diego, but has worked across the state of California and done more districts than anybody else in the Bay Area. Marco, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, Jared. Thank you.
Tell us, before we even get into your background, tell us a little bit about what is a PBID, a TBID, any of these special districts. Let's define that, and then we'll go into who Marco is.
We've done 101 districts, and we've done more than anybody in the Bay Area, I think in LA County, as well as in San Diego. California's got probably, from a property assessment standpoint, one of the most unique pieces of legislation found in what's called Proposition 218 or Article 13D of the U.S. at the state constitution. What that does defines what a property assessment district is. I'll go over 4 of those different mechanisms that you mentioned. The business improvement district comes out of the Streets and Highway Code. Originally was adopted in 1965 when the malls were coming in. Small business districts felt that they needed to compete. Something called the Parking and Business District Improvement Act was approved in 1965. It's been amended over the years. The latest version is 1989. What that did is allow cities to, by their own initiative, create an assessment district, which was at that point called an assessment district, that was tied to business license holders. Probably 200 to 300 of those were formed in 60s, 70s, 80s. There's still some of them around. They don't generate a lot of money. If a storefront is vacant, then it doesn't generate any assessment. And the problem with those districts is every city has a different mechanism for assessing or taxing businesses. For example, I was in Glendale yesterday, Glendale, California. We run downtown Glendale, in third largest city in LA County. They don't even have a business tax. They have a business registration, but it's not a business tax. You go to LA, business taxes are based upon gross receipts. In San Francisco, the way it used to be is they were based upon your payroll. In San Diego, they're based upon the number of employees. Every city's got a different mechanism. And it doesn't matter if you're profitable or not. What matters is whatever the rationale is for a city adopting this. They don't work really well. They don't generate enough money. When I first started the flagship of New City America's district, Little Italy, we formed it as one of those merchant-based business improvement districts in 1996. Generated $70,000 to $80,000 a year back then. Still exists, generates about $130,000. Not enough money to really make an impact. Those are the business improvement districts. They're greatly restricted by something called Prop 26 now, and someone can look at Prop 26. The city of San Diego, city attorney's office said they will no longer allow those business improvement districts to be formed in the city of San Diego, and there's currently 18 of those functioning in the city of San Diego. The second one would be called a property business improvement district. What was approved by the state legislature, it's in the Streets and Highway Code, section 36600 of the Streets and Highway Code. It allows for property owners to be assessed, and the property owners can be assessed based upon following a certain formula. That act was actually amended in 1996 when what was called Proposition 218 was approved. Proposition 218, approved by the people of California, laid out how you created sales tax, how you created general tax, special taxes, and property assessments. Those are all in Prop 218, the adoption of Prop 218. And Prop 218, for example, says this is the way you set up a property assessment district. Nobody's exempt. Number 2, there's no term set to it. Number 3, there's no petition that requires it, but you need an assessment engineer's report, and you actually need a vote of the property owners by dollar amount in order to create one of these property assessment districts. For general law cities, you must use the streets and highway code because general law cities don't have the right to create their own assessment district methodology. In the legislation, section 36600, it lays out what you need to do is come up with a management district plan. You need to get the property owners, 51% of those property owners by dollar amount, to sign a petition just to get to a balloting. Balloting is required under the state constitution. That 51% is probably higher than any other percentage that triggers any type outside of maybe a Melrose district. You need a high petition threshold to get to a ballot. And I would tell you that 100% of the property owners never return their ballots. About 65% of property owners by dollar amount return their ballots. The petition is always the most difficult part of what's called a PBID. Charter cities have much more flexibility, whereas the PBID says your first term is 5 years and every term after that is 10 years. Under charter cities, and I did this in San Francisco, Oakland, Santa Rosa, San Leandro, Hayward, all charter cities, they can create their own enabling ordinance. We lowered the petition threshold to 30% because about 60% will actually return their ballots. And we allowed the property owners at that point to determine if they wanted to do something for a longer term than 5 years. For example, in San Francisco, you can do 15 years. And every district now formed in San Francisco for 15 years renews for 15 years. San Diego, the districts can exist in perpetuity. They have a 30% petition threshold. Santa Barbara, the same thing. 5 years the first term, 20 years the second term. Charter cities, and I would tell you also Santa Rosa, adopted their own enabling ordinance for Railroad Square in downtown Santa Rosa. They have a 30% petition threshold, and they exist in perpetuity also. You've got bids, you have P-bids, you have charter cities enabling ordinances, which we call community benefit districts, and then you have what's called T-bids. T-bids are an adaptation of the P-bid law as well as charter city ordinances. Those are much more oriented towards tourism, towards hotels, getting heads on beds, etc. There are probably about 100 T-bids that have been formed in the state of California. My company did the one in San Francisco, and we did the one in Anaheim and in Coronado. We don't specialize in that. There's other companies that do that, but they have to follow the same rules at the general law city. They have to follow the rules of the streets and highway code. If it's a charter city, they can do things much more flexible. Like San Francisco did a 15-year district. They did it for 30 years because they wanted to do some capital improvements around the convention center. That's what bids are, P-bids are, tourism improvement districts are, and also the charter city enabling ordinances.
All right. Sounds like you've been doing this a long time. You've been at the forefront as legislation has changed and everything else, which kind of describes your background a little bit. Anything else you want to give us as part of your background before I keep diving into these districts and how they're used as a tool of economic development?
My background was that I was a food manufacturer in a older district in San Diego, and I wound up being the volunteer president of that small business improvement district. When we closed our manufacturing plant in 1993, my wife and I both said, what do we know how to do? She was involved in some real estate and also just learning how to run computers at that point and the internet. And I had experience in working with business owners and property owners from my volunteer background as the president. And I said, let me turn this into a business. New City America was born in 1995. Did our first districts in West Hollywood and El Centro, and then in Little Italy and San Diego. We've only been doing property-based districts since then. New City America is a little bit unique in that we do three primary things. We form districts, we manage districts, and we consult with districts. We formed 101, we manage 8 in the state of California, and we consult with business improvement districts, existing ones all throughout the country.
And let's talk about economic development and using these as a tool. How do you see it being done? We'll talk about how the taxes work, how the budgets work in a few minutes, but let's look at their key function is a tool to improve an area, to attract new businesses, to retain businesses.
Since we primarily deal with property owners at this point and businesses, but because property owners are the only ones that can vote on these property-based districts. The approach is, and the first thing I ask is, we do a survey when we get hired and we ask property owners, here's general benefits. General benefits are the things that are provided from the city general fund. And then there's special benefits, which are those things over and above what the city is currently providing. For example, if a city is emptying trash once a week, but property owners think that they need their downtown or commercial corridor to have trash 5 times a week, some cities do things like with banner programs and they underwrite events. Other cities don't do that at all. For example, in Little Italy in downtown San Diego, which is again our flagship district, the city of San Diego does not empty trash. It doesn't, and we have 150 trash cans. It does not trim trees. We've got 1,200 trees and we run an urban forest here. It doesn't maintain our large piazza in the middle of the district, which is technically and legally a public park. The general benefits provided by the city of San Diego are much lower than in other cities. The special benefits do a lot more. If you go to Coronado, for example, which is right across the water in San Diego, Coronado's got great tourism improvement district. They've got a ton of hotel money and a very small city. The city does almost all those things as general benefits. That's the first thing we have to do is educate people. And the other problem, Jared, and I think you'll find this out too, most property owners think that 100% of the property taxes that they pay stay in the city, and they don't. They get to keep about 27 or 28% of their property taxes. The rest go to the school district and they go to the state. In San Diego, it's around 14%. People say, I pay taxes, but somebody who has owned property since the 1960s is paying much lower taxes than their neighbor who bought a property 3 years ago, because the assessed valuation is based upon when you bought the property. You cannot do that in California because of Prop 13. Identical parcels with identical building square footages and identical lot sizes, frontages are assessed value. Their assessed valuations are different based upon when they bought it. We have to say, what does each parcel have in common? Linear frontage, lot size, and building square footage. And then if it's a residential condo, that has a different methodology. So what we have to explain to the property owners when we do this is, number one, are you satisfied with what's going on in your downtown? And if not, would you be supportive of property owner funded sidewalk sweeping, pressure washing, social media, PR, events, banners, parking management, all those things that are over and above what a city provides? And we ask those specific questions to property owners. We've probably started attempts of 125, but we formed about 101 out of 125 that we've attempted. It's really a question of dealing with property owners, and particularly the larger property owners. But I think that when you and I have discussed, cities, counties, school districts are not exempt. They all pay, and cities, in my experience, willingly pay because they know that if they're paying 20% of a budget, 80% is going to be coming in to help improve the downtown, which then includes property taxes, improves sales taxes, hotel taxes, etc. They stay with the property owners who form a nonprofit corporation. They manage those funds in order to improve the area.
When property owners vote no, is it strictly about money? Is it that they feel like the cities don't want to, like they're responsible for this? Where is the disconnect?
Most particularly if somebody has owned their property for 40 years and they're paying 1978 property taxes with adjustments of 2% a year, they say, no, everything's fine, even though they complain about a downtown and they say that's the city's job. And I said, and the city has to do this. Why? The city doesn't provide, and most cities give extra, what I call enhanced general benefits to their downtowns, because all of the city council, the mayor, city manager, et cetera, they all want their downtowns to shine. I always tell people too, that downtown is the face of a city. People make a determination on a downtown based upon, or a city based upon what they experience in their downtown. The cities normally wanted to have enhanced services, but increasingly, nearly every city in the state of California is under structural budget deficits for the foreseeable future. a lot of those general benefits they're providing to the city are getting withdrawn. People then begin to complain, say, I pay my taxes. I said, but when did you own the property? How long, what are your property taxes compared to your neighbors? And then if you want things to stay the way they are, then don't do anything. Just keep it the way it is and keep complaining. But if you want to empower yourselves and create a financial base for improvement, this is the mechanism for doing it.
There's some key functions that we hear that these bids do that help the businesses in the area and add value. We've talked about trash collection. I've seen security guards. We talk about street cleaning. We talked about throwing events you mentioned. What are some other key benefits that you typically see in some?
Well, some of those are also parking management. For example, again, in our flagship area in Little Italy, there's only one parking structure and it's controlled by the county of San Diego, and they have rights to it from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. We had a time when we actually started our own valet program in Little Italy, and we used parking district revenues in order to fund it and underwrite it. People could come in because with different businesses, they have different rates. One would be 17, the other one would be 20. And the program worked pretty well. What we found out over the last 5 years, and particularly with COVID, a lot more people are using Uber, Lyft, and eventually they're going to be using Waymo, particularly in San Francisco, where they don't have to worry about parking because they get dropped off. That was a more unique thing. We've also engaged in some districts with service providers to make sure that we have the homeless are dealt with in a positive, constructive manner. But we also say these are the rules. If you're going to hang out here, we ask you just to act like everybody else. Don't ask for money. Don't ask for food. If you need those types of things, then we'll hook you up with a homeless service provider. But
Yeah.
we don't need you sprawled out on a sidewalk because, especially in light of the Grant Pass case dealt with by the Supreme Court, cities now do have the authority to ask homeless people to move on from public rights of way as well as parks. The problem that you have statewide, even though you have the legislative authority to do it under the Supreme Court decision, is where do these guys go? And no one's dealing with that right now.
I consult with the Shadelands P-Bid in Walnut Creek, and we offer two unique benefits to people. One is we have transit to and from BART for the workforce. They can get to, if they work there or if they're going to a business, they can get there from free from the BART train. And another is we have launched a social media drawing people to the district. But what the benefit to that has been, while we have 100 property owners, we have more than 320 different businesses. And we have put a majority of them on social media, where we have a social media consultant who comes in and they interview the businesses. They get them out online, they get the videos, they give them content. We have somebody who writes a newsletter for them and they interview a lot of them and tell a story. And that's been a great added benefit to them. I would throw that out there as two unique things that I see. And I would say if you're cleaning up homelessness, if you're improving street lighting, which we've seen in some of these districts, if you're improving trash collection or power washing, somebody was telling me about power washing the sidewalks. All of that seems like it would make the areas feel safer, cleaner, attract more foot traffic, increase property values and retail rents. Talk a little bit about that side of the equation.
The Constitution is very clear in that property value appreciation is not considered a special benefit. When you form these systems, you can't say your property values are going to go up because property values are really determined and dictated by the market. And we've seen what happens with property values downtown San Diego, downtown LA, downtown San Francisco, buildings, downtown Oakland. Buildings are not being sold in downtown, they're being auctioned off. Even though all of them have P-bids or community benefit districts in place. Even coming out of COVID, we didn't lose one of our 85 restaurants, cafes, bars during COVID. One thing, and again, I keep mentioning Little Italy, but we have over 100,000 Facebook followers, over 90,000 Instagram followers, just as you were saying, that social media has totally transformed what people think about areas, because now you're telling your own story about that area rather than the perception that people have about that area. It's much easier to bring people to events, and it's much easier to get media promotion. We've done a lot of that in all of our districts too, particularly in the Bay Area. We run downtown Hayward, and we've done a lot with the Chronicle as well as other radio stations and the TV stations whenever we're doing events, getting far more exposure than we ever had. Because if you don't tell the story, then the regular media will usually not say great things are going on in downtown X. They'll usually say, oh, there was a murder, or there was a fight, or there are a whole bunch of kids that rushed into a store and ripped stuff off, right? And the media is much more sensationally oriented, and you have to tell your own story.
Let's talk about some downtowns. There's a number of downtowns in the Bay Area that do not have the structure, the special tax structure you're talking about. They have downtown associations, which are
Right.
membership driven. Talk about where are those good and where do they fail the community of the downtown that it's supposed to be supporting?
Usually when you'll go into a downtown, it either has nothing and there's no organization for people to when they have problems or issues or crises, there's nowhere to go. Or they have merchants associations, which limp along because they have to always get members and they have to raise money independently. Some you have Main Street organizations. Main Streets are basically an organizational methodology. They don't come with money, but if they do have money in terms of grants from a city, or they maybe do have some type of assessment district, a smaller merchant BID, the Main Street basically says, set yourself up as this organization. And then, but never do they have property owner associations. That's the one thing that I've learned over the years is that most downtowns, the property owners don't know each other. And one of the greatest values of creating these districts is the property owners get to know each other, even though they're neighbors. They've never worked together. It's easy to get the business owners together because they usually are in a state of crisis, but it's much more difficult to get the property owners together. Some are controlled by trust. Some are controlled by people that are out of town. Some people that have owned their property for 60 years say nothing's wrong. You make an attempt to try to do an investigation to find out if there's the boots on the ground to do this. It's easier to organize businesses, but the businesses in terms of the state legislation, the businesses aren't the ones that pay into the district. The property owners are the ones that pay into the district, unless it's one of the old time BIDs, which can be renewed annually and need to be renewed annually at a city council level.
And it appears that in either those downtown associations or those that have to be renewed annually, the bigger difference is the revenue. You're talking about membership driven, you're talking about needing sponsorships, you're talking short term, not the ability to plan long term in terms of revenue like a PBID could. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
Yes, exactly. And in the old days, I'd say 50s and 60s, when there were still department stores in downtowns before malls and freeways came in, it was almost like your civic obligation to join the chamber. People would join the chamber when a lot of the major companies left main streets and they went to the malls. You lost a lot of the economic foundation of those downtowns at that point. And the chambers then lost their economic base too. The chamber, for example, formed Redwood City, downtown Redwood City, which has just had great success. That's controlled by the Chamber of Commerce in Redwood City because the chamber was really wedded with the property owners. Sometimes it works when chambers run property business improvement districts or community benefit districts, as I call them. But that's more the exception than is the rule. Chambers are more economic development corporations now, and they spread regionally in order to maintain their membership. But what we're talking about here is district management corporations whose sole purpose is to deal with a boundaried area, and the revenue generated in that boundaried area, they use that to provide services that improve that district. A district management corporation is different than a chamber because it's really guided by a management district plan, funding base, as well as specific boundaries.
And let's look at some examples you've done. You've done Hayward and San Leandro. I think you helped create both of those, correct?
And we did 11 in Oakland. We did 2 in Berkeley. And we've been pretty much all over the Bay Area, East and West.
Give Oakland's a little different because it's a bigger city as is San Francisco, but talk a little bit about San Leandro and Hayward, maybe as an example. How did you first come to it? How did you get through the vote? What are the benefits that they're using? Walk us through one example there.
San Leandro, I think we formed that in 2013, 2014, and we managed it for the first 3 years. The city manager and I had worked in other cities together, and he really wanted to see the downtown come alive. There was a lot of new development that was anticipated in downtown San Leandro. A lot of the building stock has been much older, but there were some really enlightened developers that wanted to see this. BART is also based in downtown San Leandro. The largest property owners were the city and St. Leander's Church, Catholic Church, which is not exempt. We put that together. It was approved by the property owners in, I think, 2013. And we did the first Christmas tree lighting in downtown. We did Christmas Village. We did things around the BART station. Truth is Beauty is a beautiful statue that's outside of it. We did my son Dominic did summer events all around there. We did that regularly. And we just created the social media, the PR, all those things to bring attention to downtown San Leandro. In 2018, we formed downtown Hayward, and we wound up managing that, and we've managed that since the creation of that district. Downtown Hayward had the old Mervyn site, which was just huge, and it's where their corporate headquarters were. That turned into Lincoln Landing. Downtown Hayward is also, it's got B Street, which is really their main street for all intents and purposes. It includes the BART station, City Hall. The city is the largest single property owner. There's another large single property owner that owns a Safeway Center. He's the president of the association. Downtown Hayward is really taking off. For a long time, there were issues between the downtown property owners and downtown business owners in the city. Those have all been resolved over the last 5 years. And now we have a great board of directors. It's a 501c3. We go after grants from foundations. BART's on our board. The city's on our board. All the different property owners on B Street as well as Foothill are on our board. It's a really eclectic group of people. They're all highly motivated because they see downtown Hayward as really a base. We're trying to get a lot more of the college students to patronize it, and I think that it's moving in a really good direction. But what a lot of these different areas need is a critical mass of restaurants, because restaurants are what drive people to an area. So what we're just trying to do is put all the pieces together that were never together, get the larger property owners, the more enlightened business owners on board, working closely with the city. And we're seeing a lot of new development. Lincoln Landing opened about 400, market rate housing units, a lot of great retail, and that has become an anchor. We just need to get probably a little bit more in terms of restaurants in downtown Hayward. And once that happens, we did the first taste of downtown Hayward, was a really great success. It had never been done before. We did that last year. And those are the pieces that New City America puts together in order to bring a lot more attention. Great social media, great PR. People say, oh, what are we doing tonight? Let's go to downtown Hayward. There's a lot of things that are going on there. That's what we're trying to do, is build the image. When someone says downtown Hayward, good things come up in their mind. And they said, yes, it's a great place to live. It's close to the BART station. And there's a lot of elements that seem to make a lot of sense.
I think that's a great example of how these districts can transform downtown suburban areas and even improve the urban cores. Talk about, there's been a couple cities, we won't name them, in the Bay Area that their downtowns have increased in vacancy. They're off the highway compared to other areas. They're not getting the foot traffic, but yet they have and they have active downtown associations, but they've failed to move forward to a property district association or some other mechanism. And part of that is there's a disconnect between the tenants and property owners who may not even be in the area. Talk a little bit maybe about how you've seen that work and where there's that disconnect a little bit.
We came up with, and my wife always said, you got to put what we do in a template. How do I explain this to people? And I used my 5 fingers when I'm speaking in front of large groups. It said, number one, you need a place. As what you're alluding to right now is there's a place. The downtown might have a lot of vacancies, but it's still a downtown. Secondly, you need independent, sustainable revenues. That's where everything falls down. Because if property owners aren't involved and they don't care about special benefits and seeing their downtown enhanced, if they don't have a financial base, then it's extremely difficult to do something. And I would say you always use the tin cup analogy. You go around, you're doing a holiday parade or lighting a holiday tree or something. You ask everybody for a donation, and some guy will say, "Oh, come back tomorrow. I'm really busy right now." You're never going to have the revenues that you need to do it. And you certainly can't provide sustainable services such as sidewalk cleaning, because these districts are really based upon curb to property line, not private property, but curb to property line, because that's what the public experience is. Third, if you have the place and you have the sustainable revenues in place, which is a PBID, a TBID, or community benefit district, then you need an entrepreneurial 501c3 or public benefit corporation in order to leverage your assessments with donations. If your family wants to donate something to a new public park or a new plaza or piazza that's in the downtown, they sell tiles for $500 or $1,000, and you get the charitable write-off on it because it's building public benefit within the downtown. The fourth thing you need is politics and timing. And he says, even though we got the balloting, the petition done, the balloting done, he said, let's put this in abeyance. Never did anything. He was forced to resign 9 months later. Politics and timing is really critical. Your city council, your city manager have to think that this is value. And then combined with the downtown property owners, they all need to see this as the timing is right and the politics are right. Lastly, you have to manage in real time. The best example of that is, and this gets back to your original question, is COVID. How did people in these districts react in COVID? They needed to think with crisis management, and a lot of them just said, no, we're just providing our clean and safe services. Post-COVID, clean and safe services are not enough. Our downtowns, and I think this gets to your point, need to understand that the future of all of our downtowns are not going to be office buildings. Class A office buildings are hemorrhaging everywhere at this point. They were the foundation of the economic foundation of our downtowns from, I'd say, 1946 through 2020. After that, you say, what's the new impetus for growth? As people get older and the baby boomers get older and they have their large homes that they want to sell, they want to be in a much more walkable community. They want to be able to walk to a grocery store, walk to a restaurant, not deal with their cars all the time, not spend an hour on the road. I think we're seeing this everywhere. Downtown Hayward is an excellent example. Downtown San Leandro is an excellent example. Oakland, at least from 2015 through 2020, was an excellent example of people moving into downtowns. Office conversions to residential are very difficult unless it's a pre-World War II building. You're seeing a lot of people going into what were parking lots, that cities own a lot of parking lots, and building things from the ground up. And as long as the height limits justify the cost of the land, developers will do it because, as you well know, we have a lot of housing shortage. But my biggest frustration in a lot of these districts is that they're not innovative, they're not entrepreneurial. For example, Little Italy, our assessments are $1.6 million, our budget's $3 million, because we're really entrepreneurial in building a farmer's market, doing events, building public spaces, and generating revenue. And we take that approach with every single district that we manage, is that we need to create non-assessment district revenues in the form of foundation grants, coupled with our assessment districts.
And just going to San Leandro as an example, because we just had the mayor and economic development manager of San Leandro on a podcast in early January. And we were talking about their strategy for their downtown includes housing because they want foot traffic, and they realize to have the dozen restaurants that they have there, they need people to work and live and play in their community.
And you'll see that in downtown Vacaville too. There's a very large development that's occurring right outside downtown Vacaville, which are condominiums. And people will love living there as long as their downtown is attractive, clean, and safe. And Vacaville's got a really great downtown. These residents are going to want that level of services that they would see among their HOA when they walk out of their HOA and out of their condo development and they walk into downtown. They're going to want to see the same standard. If they don't have that, then what they might do is say, okay, we live here, but we're going to go somewhere else.
What advice do you have for a city council member, a city manager, whoever it is that is listening to this or thinking about doing one? What is the couple of key things you want them to know in that early stage?
You cannot run cities in the 21st century like you ran them in the 20th century. You had an expanding population base, expanding sales tax, expanding hotel taxes, expanding property taxes. We get hit with COVID. A lot of things got crippled in the process. Businesses just couldn't survive with forced government shutdowns. The advice is that to a city council person, a city manager, or a mayor is you guys in the state of California, and this is not one person's fault, are going to have structural deficits for the foreseeable future. And those are based upon not declining, but more or less flat revenues. The internet's really doing a job on sales tax. You're going to have pension obligations and you're going to have infrastructure issues, particularly with what's going on with the weather in California right now. I think that if people want their downtowns to survive, they need to understand that they need to have that financing mechanism in place. And it's not through annual grants from the city council, because those will dwindle over time because of the needs for public safety, again, infrastructure repair, pension obligations, all those things. So you say, how does a city that might own a lot of land in a downtown partner with the downtown property owners to make sure that the downtown stays above board, becomes attractive, attracts new capital, attracts new businesses? That is not going to happen by the market itself. It really needs to be planned and financed, and there needs to be a local corporation made up of city property owners and business owners that do the most to promote that downtown. The ones that do that will do quite well. The ones that don't do that will continue to be battered by the California economy. And then on top of that, you have minimum wage in California, which has escalated a lot over the last 10 years. And you have the price of utilities and energy costs, which are going up. And you have the price of housing, which is outrageous and unreasonable in the state of California. You've got all those things going on simultaneously. And if you expect a downtown to survive with all those things hitting that downtown when they can't radically raise their prices on a daily basis, then something's going to take a hit. I have to say, where are downtowns going? They're going in terms of residential, and they're going to need not only residential, but one thing that we've been really successful in doing, we did in downtown San Leandro, doing in downtown Hayward, downtown Glendale, and Little Italy, and the new ballpark district that we manage in downtown San Diego where the Padres play, public spaces. If someone's going to live in a pub and move into a downtown environment, they lose their backyards, they lose their storage, and they're going to say, where do we go in order just to relax? Most downtowns do not have public spaces with seating, or they have those benches which allow really anybody to sit there. They need tables, chairs, umbrellas. They need to be flexible. They're locked up at night. They're unlocked in the morning. And the public spaces then offer people an opportunity to go to a downtown without having to buy something. You don't have to buy a meal. You don't have to buy a drink in order to sit on the sidewalk. Public spaces are something that we're really poor on in the state of California. I think one of the greatest examples of what could be a phenomenal public space is the old Justin Herman Plaza, which is in the far east side of Market Street, across the street from the Ferry Building. But you go to Justin Herman Plaza and you say, what is this? Because they had that big structure, that fountain
art,
that hasn't worked in years. That should be one of the greatest public spaces in the state of California. And it's just never figured out how to do that. We have 6 public spaces, and we call them piazzas in our Little Italy, where people can just sit down. Kids can run around a fountain because kids love running and they love putting their hands in fountains and things like that. And parents can just sit down and talk. And the new retail is people watching. Create opportunities for people just to sit and people watch like you would do in Europe or in other great cities where people can just sit down and not have to pay for sitting down.
Experiential feel. And it just creates a vibe. If more people, there's more energy, it will lead to business attraction, increased revenue. Mark, we got to head it out. How do people find more about you?
The company is New City America, and I would say go to our website, www.newcityamerica.com. On that, you can sign up for a 15-minute, or half an hour or 1 hour consultation where I will look at what you have and just give you ideas on how you can do things. And it's a cost-effective way to figure out what their options are. Are they a charter city, a general law city? But it would be, again, www.newcityamerica.com, just how it sounds. And it has our phone number, contact information, etc.
Great. Appreciate it. Appreciate you being here and talking about downtown districts.
And I'm honored to be part of the largest podcast in East Bay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jared.
Thanks for listening to the Capstone Conversation. Don't forget to subscribe and follow Jared Ash and Capstone Government Affairs on LinkedIn. Leave us a review and share this episode with a friend.